It all started in the 17th century, where deep in the heart of colonial turmoil, a former slave called Laurent made a pact with the voodoo gods. He was not only gifted with the power of Loa by the voodoo spirit Legba, but also blessed by the earth goddess Gaea herself. And just like that, this warrior became a legend. Laurent's stories grew over the centuries and inspired later successors like Brother Voodoo. With his brother's soul bound to his own, Brother Voodoo stood against the undead as the very first Lord of the Loa. His name echoed through generations, whispered in both fear and reverence. So, who was Brother Voodoo really? Where did he come from? Let's unravel this powerful figure and his unexpected bond with Marvel's Daywalker. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Who is Brother Voodoo? Before he was Dr. Voodoo, before he became the Sorcerer Supreme, Jericho Drum was just a man trying to run from his past. Born and raised in Haiti, Jericho grew up surrounded by the whispers of spirits and a family steeped deep in the traditions of voodoo. But instead of embracing it, he chose to walk a different path. Even though his parents wanted him to be a lawyer, he chose to study psychology and left his homeland for America. For the longest time, he seemed to be comfortable within his environment. That life gave him answers that science could explain, and he had no reason to look back for around 12 years. But life doesn't care about comfort. One day, Jericho was called back home because his brother, Daniel Drum, was dying. He was a respected Hungan, a voodoo priest, in his hometown and had the misfortune of crossing paths with a demon-possessed man called Zobop. That particular incident deteriorated his health more than anything, and with his last breath, he begged Jericho to take up the family's voodoo legacy. At first, Jericho refused because, obviously, the guy had spent way too much time rejecting the world his brother lived in. But when he tried to face the Zobop himself and nearly died, he realized that some battles require more than science. They need spirit. So he changed and sought out Papa Jumbo, a revered voodoo elder, and began his training in the mystic arts. He was reconnecting with his culture, his ancestors, while learning the magic. And when the time came, he performed the same spell that began the Brother Voodoo legacy centuries earlier. Just like Laurent, the 17th century slave-turned-hero, Jericho bonded the spirit of his dead brother to his own. That was the moment he became Brother Voodoo, Lord of the Loa. From that day forward, he became a champion of balance and protector of the mystical world. He fought dark forces that threatened the living and guided souls that wandered too far. Jericho would be one of those people who are not about flashy tricks, but rather focus more on attaining a spiritual balance and preserving the tradition. Jericho's connection to his brother became a signature part of his power because he acted more like a weapon, a guide, and more often a conscience. The two brothers, one alive and one spectral, operated as a singular force, balancing vengeance and healing in equal measure. Isn't that quite a duo? Eventually, Jericho would take up the mantle of Sorcerer Supreme, proving his mastery of magic was cosmic. But even as he stood among the most powerful magic users in Marvel's universe, he never lost sight of who he was, a boy from Haiti, shaped by pain, powered by tradition, and always marching to the beat of a different drum. Origin backstory. Let's talk about Laurent for a second, because he started this entire thing. Now, the 17th century wasn't the best time to be a man of color. In fact, we know that it's one of the darkest chapters in human history because it saw a rise in the transatlantic slave trade. Somewhere in those brutal plantations of the Caribbean, an enslaved African became something far more than a victim of his times. With the help of the spirits of voodoo tradition and the god Legba himself, Laurent was gifted with mystical powers. When his brother Alexandre was killed, Laurent was the first to bind Alexandre's soul to his own through ancient magic. This act made him the first to bear the mantle of Lord of the Loa. He soon became a symbol of resistance, of fighting back against the undead forces unleashed on his people, including zombies manipulated by dark sorcery. Alongside a rogue French pirate named Captain Tiger, Laurent's legend grew into stories of power and courage, hereby inspiring a line of successors, one of those being Brother Voodoo. Role of Brother Voodoo in Blade comic books. Tomb of Dracula number 34, 1975. Brother Voodoo and Blade cross paths. In Tomb of Dracula number 34, we get one of the earliest and most underrated team-ups in Marvel's catalog. Set in the gritty, gothic underworld of the 1970s, this issue brings together two of the most iconic monster hunters with wildly different methods and philosophies. The story begins with Brother Voodoo, aka Jericho Drum, arriving in New York to investigate occult disturbances linked to vampiric energies. Simultaneously, Blade is deep into his mission to track Dracula, who is continuing his blood-soaked rampage through the city. Their paths cross when they both pursue a group of cultists attempting to resurrect an ancient vampiric entity. What's wild here, though, is how none of them trusted each other. Blade thought of Voodoo's magic as risky and unpredictable, while Drum saw Blade's brutal methods as dangerous and rather even short-sighted. But the turning point comes mid-battle, when Dracula uses his telepathic powers to control innocent civilians, and Blade's brute strength alone wasn't enough to save them. This is where Brother Voodoo stepped in to channel the Loa and summon Daniel's spirit in order to break Dracula's control. At the end of the day, that very spiritual angle saved the day, even when Blade had no faith in it. Brother Voodoo's significance in this issue is his sense of calm and deeply cultural approach in fights, which is usually all fists and fangs. Now, Blade doesn't openly thank him because, of course, it's Blade. But from this point on, there's a mutual respect between the two. They don't become best friends right away, but their partnership becomes one of those rare, when the world needs saving, we put our differences aside dynamics that work so well in Marvel's supernatural stories. Doctor Strange, Damnation numbers 1 through 4, 2018. Brother Voodoo joins Blade and the Midnight Mission. In Doctor Strange, Damnation, the stakes are hellishly high, quite literally. After Doctor Strange attempts to undo the destruction of Las Vegas by resurrecting it post-Secret Empire, his magic inadvertently allows Mephisto to claim the entire city as his own hellish domain. Brother Voodoo then becomes one of the central figures brought in to clean up this mess. When all hell breaks loose and the sun vanishes, the only ones standing between humanity and vampiric domination are a team of battle-hardened, morally gray, magic-using monster hunters. Alongside Blade, Elsa Bloodstone, Ghost Rider, Man-Thing, and others, Voodoo joins the Midnight Suns, assembled by Wong to battle Mephisto's infernal forces. When Doctor Strange is captured and corrupted into a demonic version of himself, it's Voodoo's mastery over spirits and the Loa that proves instrumental in fighting off the possessed defenders of Las Vegas. While Blade leads the vampire-slaying assault, Brother Voodoo focuses on resurrection rites and counter-hexes against vampire sorcery. At one point, Brother Voodoo even taps into the spirit realm to rally souls trapped by Mephisto's magic and guides them to possess and empower the team. That is some classic Jericho Drum. He constantly grounds the more brutal members of the team, reminding them what they're fighting for, not just what they're fighting against. What makes this arc especially significant is how it reestablishes Brother Voodoo as a core part of Marvel's supernatural elite, rather than just a side character. Brother Voodoo, Dambala's Wangal and Moonnight. Brother Voodoo's early stories laid the groundwork for everything he could eventually become, from mystical protector to a crucial supernatural ally of Blade. One of the earliest major threats Jericho faced was Dambala, who was like a voodoo god. After taking on the mantle of Brother Voodoo, Jericho inherited the mystical artifact, which was once wielded by his mentor, Papa Jumbo. This amulet was called Wangal, and it granted him a deeper connection to the Loa to amplify his magical abilities. But it also made him a target for Dambala's dark cults, who viewed Jericho as both a rival and a betrayer of their faith. This arc was key to establishing Brother Voodoo's place as a balance between the living and the dead, and in a way, the Wangal became both his weapon and burden. Although his power wasn't drawn from ancient books or mystical objects alone, it was deeply rooted in his cultural legacy. During this time, Brother Voodoo also crossed paths with Moon Knight, who was another character connected to the supernatural, albeit through the Egyptian god Khonshu. Their team-up occurred in the backdrop of a zombie outbreak orchestrated by voodoo cults gone rogue. Jericho and Moon Knight joined forces in a gritty battle against the undead in New Orleans, one of many dark crossroads where the dead walked among the living. This storyline served as a thematic road to his inevitable interactions with Blade, his dealings with the undead, and his ability to walk through both physical and spiritual worlds made him an ideal ally for vampire hunters and supernatural warriors. Zombies vs. Vampires and Losing Laura Lee. One of the darker and more emotionally charged chapters of Brother Voodoo's journey is when he finds himself caught between two of Marvel's most terrifying supernatural forces, vampires and zombies. While traveling to Brazil, Jericho Drum lends his mystical expertise to vampire hunter Frank Drake to thwart Dracula's vampiric ambitions. It's a high-stakes clash where voodoo magic meets ancient undead royalty, showcasing Jericho's willingness to put himself in the line of fire for the greater good. Shortly afterward, he teams up with Jack Russell, the infamous werewolf by night, helping Jack take control of his monstrous alter ego by guiding the spirit of Daniel Drum to assist him in mastering the beast within. But it's not all heroic victories. Tragedy strikes when Brother Voodoo crosses a line in his personal life, and in a desperate attempt to make Laura Lee Tate love him, he commands Daniel to possess her. The act, while not malicious, is a betrayal of trust between Laura Lee and his brother. Jericho recognizes his moral failure and severs his bond with Daniel's spirit. It's a painful turning point for him, especially because he has to confront the limits of his powers, both as a mystic and a man. Blade and Heroes for Hire. Brother Voodoo's interactions with Blade span several supernatural battles, often involving dark sorcery and ancient curses. One of their notable confrontations was against Marie Laveau, who was this infamous voodoo priestess. She was quite the troublemaker, with her schemes spiraling into dark territory, ranging from necromancy to alchemical manipulation. Brother Voodoo and Blade's uneasy alliance proved effective, especially when navigating the blurred lines between science and sorcery. Outside these direct confrontations, Brother Voodoo also became affiliated with the Heroes for Hire, which was a team of street-level heroes tasked with supernatural missions. Jericho's presence added a much-needed magical edge to a team that included combat-focused heroes like Misty Knight and Colleen Wing. Though Blade was never a formal member of Heroes for Hire, their overlapping battles and shared enemies ensured their paths crossed frequently. Whenever dark magic threatened humanity, Brother Voodoo and Blade were often on the front lines, bound by duty and respect. Sorcerers Supreme and Divas. The mystical forces of the universe chose Jericho Drum as the successor of Stephen Strange, who willingly stepped down from his position. This change is rather marked as a pivotal role in Jericho's identity within the Marvel Universe. Jericho inherited some of the most iconic magical artifacts, the Eye of Agamotto, the Cloak of Levitation, and the ancient Books of Knowledge. Once symbols of Strange's unparalleled arcane mastery, they now rested in the hands of someone whose roots lay in the rhythms of voodoo. Dr. Voodoo wasn't granted time to ease into his role, though. His greatest trial came almost instantly as he faced a confrontation with Agamotto. The ancient mystical being was not really happy with Jericho's appointment and started the brutal, reality-bending battle with him, during which Jericho was forced to marshal all his knowledge of the Loa and voodoo. Jericho, in an act of self-defense, willingly gave his life to stop Agamotto's rampage and protect Earth's magical balance. His death was mourned by fellow heroes, especially Doctor Strange, who deeply respected what Jericho had become. Though his time as Sorcerer Supreme was brief, Jericho's impact was enormous. He had proven that the power rooted in Haitian mysticism was just as formidable as the more traditional schools of magic in Marvel lore. Avenger of the Supernatural and Zombieverse. After his apparent death while battling Agamotto, Jericho came back with renewed purpose. Resurrected under unusual and mystical circumstances, Dr. Voodoo stepped into a new role that pushed him even deeper into the dark corners of the Marvel Universe as an Avenger of the Supernatural. This phase of his journey saw him fighting forces that most heroes couldn't comprehend, let alone survive. Jericho aligned with characters like Man-Thing, Elsa Bloodstone, Damon Hellstrom, and of course, Blade, whom he already shared a long, blood-soaked history. Together, they formed a magical frontline against monsters and otherworldly threats. This particular group operated with deadly precision, almost like the Midnight Suns Reborn, but meaner and darker. In Dr. Voodoo's involvement with the Zombieverse, the stakes were very high, to say the least, especially because Jericho found himself navigating this nightmare while tasked with preventing the infection from leaking into other dimensions. With some of his knowledge of necromancy and voodoo bindings, he stood as one of the last true barriers between Earth-616 and complete contamination. Unlike other mystics who might fear zombified versions of their comrades, Dr. Voodoo faced them head-on, and despite the chaos of possessions and some walking corpses, he remained grounded, all thanks to his Haitian roots and even his brother's spirit, whom he reconnected with. Chaos War and Resurrection. When the Chaos War storyline rocked the Marvel Universe, the boundary between life and death shattered like glass. The Japanese death god Mikaboshi, renamed the Chaos King, unleashed a wave of cosmic annihilation by erasing afterlives and releasing countless souls from the beyond. For Jericho Drumm, this was no ordinary mystical disturbance. It was personal, especially because somewhere out there, beyond the veil, his own spirit floated after he had seemingly died while fighting with Agamotto. But in true Dr. Voodoo fashion, death was just another door. During Chaos War, Dead Avengers, Jericho Drumm was resurrected alongside other fallen heroes like Vision, Swordsman, Deathcry, and Yellowjacket. And no, they were not simply zombie resurrections. They were given new life along with a desperate mission to protect the remaining sanctums of existence from Mikaboshi's erasure. Jericho was now thrown into the heart of celestial madness. Some may say that his resurrection wasn't gentle or that it wasn't fair, but it was certainly necessary. Life itself was unraveling, and Jericho fought tooth and nail to keep what remained of it intact. We see a relatively crucial moment when Jericho had to reconcile the very nature of his powers. It was during this chaos that his connection with Daniel resurfaced in a newer, more profound way as their strained relationship found a moment of healing. I guess it proves that a family bond survives even in moments of universal destruction. Mikaboshi was eventually defeated, but Jericho wasn't cast back into death. He had earned a second life this time, whether through divine will or cosmic fluke. Strange Academy. There was a need to train the next generation of magic users now, and who better to do the job than Brother Voodoo himself? Dr. Voodoo co-founded the Strange Academy alongside Dr. Strange, so as an instructor, he would mentor young sorcerers by imparting his vast knowledge. Because, let's be fair, Earth's mystical future rests in young hands that need to be tamed. Nestled in New Orleans, the Academy became a sanctuary for magical prodigies from all realms and dimensions. While Strange leans into arcane theory and multiversal threats, Drum focuses on balance, respect for the Loa, and the emotional maturity required to responsibly use power. More than just a teacher, Jericho becomes a mentor and a father figure to many students. He's stern when needed and always quick to remind his pupils that magic is not a game, but rather a responsibility. Powers. Brother Voodoo possesses a unique array of mystical abilities rooted in Haitian Vodou. As we already know, he could summon the spirit of his deceased twin brother while also being able to possess others, granting him control over their actions. Not to forget, summoning Daniel's spirit can double his strength, which is like an added advantage in a physical combat. He can produce smoke accompanied by drum sounds, which conceals his presence while allowing him to see through it, while also being able to control fire along with being immune to its effects. If that's not mind-blowing enough, he could command animals and, to a lesser extent, plants, using a form of mystic hypnosis. We have also seen how he can invoke the Loa and transport himself and others instantaneously to necessary locations. The travel industry would seriously collapse if we all got that kind of ability. After being the Sorcerer Supreme, his powers only increased to wield the Eye of Agamotto, the Cloak of Levitation, and the Books of Knowledge. Weaknesses. But despite his formidable powers, Drum has certain limitations. His magical expertise is primarily in voodoo, so he's not very well versed in other mystical disciplines. Not to mention, some abilities depend on specific items like the jar of demon blood for teleportation, which is a finite resource. They say what you love dearly has the power to destroy you, which was true in the case of his deep connections with his brother's spirit, which was often exploited by adversaries. Personality. Drum's character in one word could be defined by dedication, as he is often seen protecting the mystical balance and guiding others in the responsible use of magic. Plus, his background as a psychologist sure helps maintain an empathetic approach to both his allies and enemies. Let's also not forget how the man faced death and came back from it. You need a hell of a resilience in confronting supernatural threats to do something like that. Goals. It's safe to say that he had three major goals in his life. We first see it when he masters the powers of voodoo in an attempt to avenge his brother's death. As Sorcerer Supreme, he aims to safeguard Earth from magical and supernatural dangers. And then, finally, he co-founded the Strange Academy in an attempt to guide and educate young magic users. Appearance. Drum's visual representation reflects his cultural heritage and mystical role. Attire. He often wears traditional voodoo-inspired garments, including a distinctive medallion which symbolizes his connection to the Loa. He is depicted as a tall, muscular man with dark skin who is adorned with mystical symbols and markings. His ensemble includes the Cloak of Levitation and the Eye of Agamotto when he was the Sorcerer Supreme. Marvelous verdict. And that's a wrap on Brother Voodoo. Truly a mystical powerhouse who went from humble roots to rocking the title of Sorcerer Supreme. For someone who has battled vampires with Blade and went on to mentor younger generations for the future, Dr. Voodoo, for sure, deserves to be in the spotlight for his wild, fascinating journey. So next time you see Dr. Voodoo, remember, it's not just the name that's magical, it's the man behind it. So who should Brother Voodoo team up with next? Also, do let us know which character we should cover next in the comments below. Thanks for watching, catch you in the next one. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe out there. Thanks everyone.